Hello, welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to jump on and provide an update. I appreciate it's been a week since I updated the video about my saga with Mounjaro. So they say if life gives you lemons, make lemonade, unless those lemons are laced with poison, in which case lemonade's probably not the way to go. That's a little bit how I feel about my week with Mounjaro. Yeah, so I'll just get straight into the update. So, as you know, if you've watched last week's video, I had a really productive week with Mounjaro. Effectively, my private prescriber told me that my GP, so not my registered GP, but a GP at my surgery, had said I never fitted the criteria due to ED, disordered eating, when I was a teenager. So we're talking 20 plus years ago. I had a really unproductive conversation with him, and then have been waiting till Tuesday of this week to speak to the GP that I initially spoke to in April. So I won't go into that in too much detail. You can watch that video and I'll try to remember to link it here. So I've waited until Tuesday this week for the outcome for a telephone call with that original GP, because she told me that she heads up weight loss research in the area that I live and was really knowledgeable about it, and had referred me to receive these injections on the NHS, which I was accepted for, but that never happened, and so I just progressed with purchasing it privately. So waited until this Tuesday, because that's when she had an appointment available. And as I talked about in the previous video, I have absolutely no idea who my named GP is. I had the same GP for years and years and years, and then she retired and our surgery moved, and we just see and speak to whoever is available. So when I phoned back up last week to say I would like an appointment with this GP if she still works here, they guided me through that. They said, yes, we can see who this is, we'll arrange this, next one is Tuesday. Brilliant, wonderful, great. So I've been waiting until Tuesday, and then last week I was okay, because I had my pen, a 10 milligram pen, which I was going to microdose 5 milligrams, so that should last me 8 weeks. And I did my first microdose of the 5 milligrams, and I did notice an increase in hunger almost instantly, but I don't know. I noticed my hunger had increased, and I went to do my second microdose injection and prepped the pen as you normally would. So this is in the right order. So I prepped the pen as I normally would, and nothing came out. And I did it again, nothing came out. And I thought, okay, the needle's faulty. So I used the next needle, nothing came out. And when I had done the first microdose, that's what I was going to say, I noticed the pen felt stiff, and it was making a rattly noise. And I thought maybe, that's the spring. Anyway, it did. So the pen is effectively faulty is where I'm getting to. So it's not working. And equally, and I'll see if I can show it. So I've only used this pen once for a microdose, and it looks to me like more is gone out of it than should be. So I don't know if it's leaked or where I've prepped it and then put it away. Maybe that has come out, but it's not working. And I've contacted my prescriber, and they obviously will not issue me another pen. And I think they think I'm having them on. Perhaps they think this is a way that I think I can get an additional pen. I've explained to them it's not working. I've used it once. I didn't say that I'd microdosed, because I don't know if you're meant to say that. So I have a faulty pen. I've requested that they pick this, that they arrange for a new pen, which they're not going to do, because now I'm not entitled to it. So I've asked for a refund and for them to collect this pen so that they can see that it's not faulty, and I'm not trying to scam them. I'm just in back and forth communications, and it isn't at this point looking particularly optimistic. But that means I don't have any Mounjaro. So I have gone online and I've done another consultation. and we will wait to see the outcome of that. Currently don't have it, and I have absolutely noticed that my hunger levels have increased. I'm managing it, and the food noise is not back, which is positive, but again, I've still got Mounjaro in my system. But yeah, that's where we're at with the pen of Mounjaro. So my safety net is currently not there. At this point as well, I almost feel over it. I'm like, whatever, I just want my money back. Like, I've used this pen once, it isn't working. I don't want to keep messing around with it. And then they say, oh, you've broken it. Just take the pen, give me my money back, or some of my money back, or whatever you equate that to be. So that's that disaster. And then I've waited for this phone call with the GP on Tuesday, which brings me to the second part of the disaster. So phone call comes, it's actually nearly 2 hours earlier than I was expecting, which was a bit difficult because I was in the middle of a meeting and I thought, oh no, I've missed a call. They're not now going to call me back, which has happened quite often. So when I could, I rang the surgery back and said, look, I wasn't expecting this appointment until this time. They've called, I'm in a meeting, please can they call back? In fairness, they did then call back at the time of my appointment, so that was fine. We're having this conversation, and very, very quickly I realised this is not going to be a positive conversation, because the female doctor said, there is no note on the system that you disclosed that you had an ED, and therefore you should not have been eligible for this. And I said, hold on a minute, that is absolutely not accurate. We had a whole conversation and consultation where we talked a lot about that. And we talked about the fact that I was never offered any support at the time, and I should have been. And, you asked me when the last time I had those feelings were, and my thought process around the ED and why I had used those methods and what that was about. And it was clear that at that point in my teenage years, I was in a very, very different place than I am now. And that was the discussion we had. So this goes back and forth. And then, now, as I said, this feeds back into what I said earlier, that I will speak to whatever GP is available. I have no idea of the names of the GPs. Yes, they phone up and they say it's Dr. So-and-so from the surgery, but because I speak to so many different GPs, and they change quite a lot. So you might have an appointment with a GP in a surgery and 6 months later they no longer work there. About probably 20 minutes into this phone conversation, which is already quite difficult, I suspect that actually the person I'm speaking to isn't the GP that I did the initial consultation with. And so when I then asked, she confirmed that she wasn't the GP that I'd had the consultation with. And I then asked what had happened, because I had asked to speak to that GP, but also was then really concerned that this doctor was telling me that we hadn't discussed things in a consultation, that doctor was not in. At which point, I just have to think, do they think I'm stupid, or is this system a little bit rigged? She then says that she can't see that I had requested an appointment with that initial GP, who she confirmed the name of, and I won't say the name, obviously, and said that she would put a note on the system that she couldn't overturn the decision from the conversation I'd had with that GP, but felt that it was appropriate, as I had requested, to speak with the GP that I had originally discussed with, and she could see that had led to a tier 3 weight loss referral. I did raise my concern about the nature of some of the conversations she was having with me, because actually you could feel like you were going mad because they're telling you didn't say things that were discussed, and then she's like, it wasn't actually even me. So anyway, I've then waited and have managed to eventually speak to the GP who prescribed me. And again, I feel like things get lost in translation when you speak to so many people, but I felt she was instantly phoning up because she felt that I wanted to now purchase these things on the NHS, and she just was straight away, you would no longer fit the criteria. What's your BMI? We almost went straight into a consultation. What's your BMI? What's your current weight? How much weight have you lost? And then very much went into a line of quite accusationary, like, you've lost all this weight in a really quick amount of time. That's not usual. People on these weight loss injections should lose between such and such. And, I said, hold on a minute. Actually, my eating when using this has been probably the most undisordered it's ever been. And I'm prioritising nutrition. I said I've got food diaries, I can go through those. She did request to see copies of those food diaries, and I've emailed them over to the surgery, haven't had any feedback. And effectively, she was able to confirm that we had discussed the issues with my eating when I was a teenager, and that she hadn't felt that they were prevalent enough now, or even relevant now, to have an impact on whether I should be prescribed on the NHS or prescribed privately. And so she said she was going to go away, look at the food diaries, and then she's then on annual leave, but would come back to me and requested that I make another appointment. I then said, well, actually, this is my plan to taper down, and that's a plan I feel comfortable with. Haven't really had a lot of guidance, but, it's a medication. I don't, think you should just come off of a medication. She quoted me some research and said that, research is emerging, and, there isn't a best way to do it, but yes, there is evidence that tapering down and, maintenance doses and coming off, and, I talked to her about my long-term fears about what if I'm not able to sustain these changes without it. And so we had quite an in-depth conversation, but then she said, on the basis of my current criteria, so height, weight, BMI, I wouldn't be eligible for it any longer, and that on that basis, she wasn't making a different recommendation, but it was for a different reason, and that she would liaise with my prescriber around that, and then read my food diaries. We would have this updating appointment, and then we'd come up with a plan, but very much was, maybe, would you like some voucher? Like, it just wasn't how, it wasn't constructive. And I had to sort of say, I've tried all these things before. I am not, I don't need to lose more weight. I'm not attempting to lose more weight. I told her that I've upped my calories to have a maintenance, and that typically I can eat anywhere between, 1,600 and 2,200 calories a day. Yeah. So it wasn't a no, but it wasn't it sort of was a no, but it was sort of like an open-ended no. Like, right now, you don't meet the criteria, which I already know, but I'm not on this now to lose weight. And I'm more than happy, as she suggested, that, I have a high level of oversight through my surgery around, food plans, although I do feel like I've got all of that in hand, and that help would have been helpful a long time ago. That's the discussion that we've had. So I'm going to have this appointment in a fortnight. And we'll go from there. She's going to review the food diaries. But ultimately, I do think back, and I think even let's say I did have an ED now, I could fabricate those food diaries. I could just say that's what I'm eating. There is no evidence from her that I am eating those things. Even if I sent her a video recording of me eating those things, there's no evidence to suggest that I'm not struggling with an ED. So part of me feels like it's just really pointless. This is just really pointless. And, I've never been offered sufficient help with EDs or weight gain, really. I haven't. Chucking someone some Slimming World vouchers and then going, oh, okay, you gained your weight back, have some more, is not sufficient help. So it's not a closed no, it's just more of an open-ended, not right at this minute. So we shall see what happens with that. I feel frustrated. I think it's just a frustrating process, and particularly more frustrated with the fact that this other GP called me and then was telling me that discussions weren't had but were had, and then when I questioned that, it wasn't actually even me. And I do, I think, what about people that wouldn't be able to fight their corner then? What about people that would just think, oh, I'll just leave it as it is? There's a power imbalance there, isn't there? And so I did think about that. It's lucky that I'm, prone to being a little bit gobby, let's just say, in an appropriate way. And I'm not confessing to being a Karen. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not. I really am not. But I think you have to fight for what's right, and it's just frustrating. I feel like a lot of the time in this country we have to fight a lot for what is right. And then you're left in a position where you think, actually, okay, so to continue this in a healthy way, in a sustainable way, I have to do something I really shouldn't do, fabricate, you know, send old pictures or lie about your weight. Like, why should you have to do that? It's not what you should have to do. Be that as it may, I'm now done a new consultation with a different prescriber that I haven't used before, and I am waiting to hear. I've sent evidence that I've got the 10 milligram pen. You know, and we'll just go from there, and I'll update you at that. But yeah, it's got to the point where I don't know if anyone's ever had something happen to them where it becomes so much of a disaster, it's almost funny. I remember going on a holiday when I was about 14, and everything that could go wrong on this holiday went wrong. It was an absolute disaster, but it became so disastrous that within it, it was hilarious. It was like a carry-on film, like, you know, just everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I sort of feel like with Mounjaro at the moment, aside from the really positive stuff, everything that could have happened with it, bar, I don't know, a comet falling from the sky and landing directly on my Mounjaro pen, that actually it's been a bit of a disaster week. And sometimes the universe says no, and you've just got to listen to that. So that's the not so much of an update. Like I said, I am not remote at this point. I'm like, yeah, it is what it is. The universe has said no. Listen to the universe. You just got, as I said last week, pull up your big girl pants and get on with it. I am hungrier, but I'm still eating well. I'm jumping. Me and Deborah are jumping, and I am jumping. Me and Deborah are jumping and getting some of that frustration out. And if you follow Deborah's channel, which I'll link here, she's doing shorts. She's doing Stand Up to Cancer, so she's doing these shorts of steps and jumping and exercise every day, and she's doing amazingly. So yeah, I'm absolutely fine about it at this point. I just think sometimes you have to listen to what's going on around you, and it'll either work itself out or it won't, and I'll just have to go from there. There's not a huge amount more I can do. I feel slightly more optimistic from the open-endedness of the GP. She wasn't completely dismissive. It is what it is, isn't it? So I hope everyone's having an awesome week, and I will see you in the next one.